Hi everyone, Styrbjörn Torbacke. I am a Swede working for a Finnish company. And as you saw, the title of my talk is, does analytics have to make the complex complex? Why couldn't the complex be made simple? We are an analytics company, but we sort of shy away from using that terminology ourselves because the people we talk to when we're out there, they have a preconception about analytics needing to be cumbersome, costly, difficult, project-based, etc. And we've tried to make that simple instead. So I'm a product vendor. I will be giving examples on how we have implemented these thoughts into our product and making examples from that product. This is not intended as a sales pitch, unless you're a retailer, and then I have the order book with me. More to give you food for thought on ways to address some of the issues that Henrik was talking about in his initial speak, what you touched on with the empowered employee and having information, etc. So as a background, Zoind was started based on two drivers, an enabler, and a vision. In Finland, 2011, by four founders who had a background in analytics, data warehousing, data management, etc. And it was all about them having felt they needed to reinvent the wheel in every single project they did. That made the project cost prohibitive to scale, and also stop dispersing the value of the project to operational employees. Then along came cloud computing, enabling them to actually build the code and keep the code and letting multiple end users, organizations share the same code base, make value out of that, and also share the costs of doing this. Ultimately, with the vision of giving analytics to every single employee within organizations. So where are we today? We are a pure subscription-based SaaS. We don't do on-premise installations, so there's never any hardware requirements for the customers. All consumption through the user interface is HTML5, so runs on any device, any operating system. And we've taken all the KPIs and metrics and built them into the project, into the product. I refer to this service as a product because it is heavily productified. It doesn't require an IT project to go live. There is no programming involved, etc. And I'll come back and defend some of these statements a little bit later. And this allows us, again, to... Analytics are already in place within retail and most other organizations. At headquarters, used, as we've heard in many of the previous speeches, to make informed decisions at headquarters, while many of the operational employees are still flying very much blind without anything to support their actions. And we find ourselves being able to cater to that operational need in parallel to the already existing solutions in there. Our world, and this is the first example of a simplification of things. We talked about silos before. We are siloed. We're not siloed based on data systems, data sources, but we're siloed based on industry vertical. We only deal with retail and hospitality. So that is what substantiates my claim that we've taken all the metrics and KPIs and built them into the product, because we only deal in those verticals. So we've been able to productify 90–95% of the key metrics that are used by retailers. And it's fairly common regardless of size and scale or geographical homestead. So that's one thing. By focusing on an area and you all know what businesses you come from and what's relevant to you. Don't try to take the whole thing, the eating the elephant analogy. It's one bite at a time. So our world consists of a number of siloed systems, and they all transact, sense, store information, analyze information, and maybe visualize it, but they do it within their silo, possibly by bringing some aggregate data in from other silos. We're not all at all about that. We sit on top of everything. We're not trying to replace any other systems. So we will be fed by all these transactional systems. And our strength is in bringing all these various data sources together, combining, correlating them, and thereby giving value to the end users. So extracting store and venue related data, much more front of store than the supply chain back of store processes. It's a pure cloud-based service, as said, a data warehouse, and then on top of that sits analytics engine where these algorithms are built into it. And data presentation back out to users in a combination of customer predefined reports that are static, there to give snapshots, as well as a portal where you can interact with the data and work the data according to your function, etc. Thereby providing the ability to act on the facts relevant to what you do in your specific function within the company. This is the most complicated slide in the deck. It's the same slide as the previous one, but from a technology point of view instead on what goes on under the hood. And that is also something I believe is quite important if you're going to build this as a productified service that can be shared across numerous companies or users or user categories. It needs to be extremely powerful. So a couple of things to highlight is our ability. If we don't get data in very rapidly from the feeding systems, we have nothing to work and do the analysis on, and nothing to give insights to the users for them to work with. So therefore, we're on a Vertica data warehouse cluster, and that is something that has proven to be the best solution for us. We're a schema-based, SQL-based model in that respect, fully ORDS compliant on that bit. So what's this background? What is it we actually deliver? What's the business value to the users of this? Well, the first thing is, I assume a number of you have sat through meetings where you discuss sales figures, for example, and you've got people representing various functions that will pull out their laptops or their printed reports, and they all have different figures. So a unified view by having various source systems feed into one is a first thing. And then making sense and visibility out of the figures you have. So within the silo, rather than to have to sift through and work with all the data rows within that silo, we allow customers and users to take a number, a sales number, and then break it down and look at it from a perspective, be that from a product dimension, breaking a product into, or a category into subcategories to product in a certain size and a certain color, or by a geographical dimension, or by a vendor dimension, or a payment dimension. It's all about sitting on granular data, being able to process that extremely rapidly in the background, and then allowing people to take off and take that number in regarding what they're trying to achieve out of this. The next thing is adding value, the so what question. When you're siloed, you risk being able to walk your sales numbers up and down. And the risk is the outcome of that is so what? So the second thing is by combining multiple data sets, you do achieve bigger insights. So sales plus footfall gives you conversion rate, which is closer to an insight than just data. This is an example of footfall data, sales in the curves, and weather information, which is the single source that we actually bring to the table. Everything else is what the customer brings to the table. Next one, flexibility. You will always have certain processes in the organization where you want to set up standard reports that are scheduled, they're not touched, they're there to inform and not to be interacted with, versus the user-driven ad hoc analyses where you find something and you want to understand why is that happening. So you need the ability to drill through, look at data from various perspectives, etc. So the way that's been implemented is, this is an example of an email report where there is a storyline telling of what has happened. There are figures, color coding, if it's using signal colors, if it's red, or if it's good or if it's bad, and also graph format. So there is, regardless of how we are as individuals, there's something in it for everyone. The counterpart to that, the ad hoc bit, is implementing a Lego box, because basically that's what we are. We are a big box and we brought all these different metrics and KPIs in there as Lego pieces. And a section where users can then select the pieces they want to build together to make something relevant out of. And then finally, it's all role-based. So to make this effective and efficient in the organization, you don't create a whole lot of dashboards and different visualizations. You create one and you tie it to a user's role, and it will populate with the data that user is privy to seeing and handling. And that's the way that then is implemented as an example. So what I tried to come back to here is the cloud, software as a service, not building this on-premise for individual organizations, but rather to bring it together as a service used by multiple organizations, allows even smaller players that might not have the resources and financing to go into doing their own projects on this, to share costs around other things. A big thing is standardizing the data sources. So we've been fortunate enough to work with some of the largest players in the world in each silo. So there's standard interfaces ready to get information pushed from there. And not being sensor-centric or an open toolbox. What we've done in this, which is a trade-off, is of course, again, the Lego pieces, if they're in the box, you can use them and you can build pretty much what you want. If they're not in there, you don't have them unless we add them at a later stage. We touched a little bit on the bit about predictive, prescriptive. As you see, the crystal ball is empty. Much of this is related to the machine learning without human intervention, as was discussed before. We're very much a product company and have therefore chosen not to have a consultancy division. We want to be something that you can pull off the shelf, plug in, and run with, meaning that we need to have a platform And this is, again, part of the reason why we've chosen to work with Vertica, where there are tool sets that are ready to run more or less out of the box. And we're not there, in my opinion, on most of the self-learning algorithms, etc., that they can really provide value being run completely autonomously. But we are looking at it, and we'll get there eventually. And the final piece is unstructured data. Everything we do right now is structured data that's easy to handle. We do both qualitative and quantitative data. Qualitative, where it can be turned into a quantifiable metric, net promoter scores or happy or not kind of icon faces. They can be inside a numeric value and thereby handled. But Vertica also has a sister product called Idle, which is then the unstructured bit. So that's another reason why we've used to set ourselves on that platform and go from there. That is the end of my speech.